Hey guys, so today we're gonna finish this 3x3. So I think I'm gonna go through how I print it, like which orientation I use and everything, how I split up the parts and all that type of stuff. But there are a couple finishing touches that we still have to do, so let's get that out of the way. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish the outside of the puzzle. And I like to do this last just because it's kind of satisfying. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna select these sort of outer edges, and you're going to want to make that, well, it's sort of to taste, so I think 2 millimeters is good for my personal preference. And then you add another fillet on this edge and this edge, and 0.5 millimeters is usually good. And also, actually let's do this a different way. We can just select all these faces and even this face. Yeah, it's a little bit of a problem there, but that works. It's not that bad. Let's just hide this edge. See why it's making the fillet weird like that. Oh, I see. Well, you won't really notice that anyways after you print it. Okay, so now that the pieces are all finished, the first thing I like to do is rename them just so it's easy when I get the parts to turn them into whatever I'm going to make them into. So I'm going to right click on that part, say rename, and make that corner. We'll move on to the next piece, rename edge, that's the cat, rename the last one, no, whoops, not properties, I meant rename, and that is the center. Now if you want to make a core, you can do that pretty easily. I can show you how to do that right now actually. Let me just do that real quick. I'm going to make a quick sketch. Let's hide everything. I'm going to do a center point arc. Click here. Come on. Click there. Make a line. And then do a revolve around this axis here. And then what you'd do is you'd cut out holes in each of the different axes. So go in here, make a 0.25 millimeter hole, a little bit smaller than the, oh man, that's wrong. 2.5. There you go, that's better. And then extrude, remove, I want this to be symmetric. And then we can just drag this out till it goes outside of the core. That's good. And then you could pattern that around or whatever. I'll do it around one axis, but I don't want to get too far into this. You can just use a transform. Actually, let's do a pattern. Circular pattern, entities to pattern. I want to do a feature pattern. I want to pattern that around. The axis of pattern is this. And that looks good. And that looks good. And now what I do is you take a shell and you click on the outside face, and that'll turn that into a core. And you can play around with all those settings that are in here, like you can make it bigger or smaller or whatever, and then you have a nice little core. Of course, you would pattern the holes around and up and down and all around, sort of like you patterned the original surfaces in the first tutorial. Anyhow, if you guys want me to show you how to do this in depth, then I can do that later. But for now, I think this is good. So I'm going to delete all that. Go back to here, press P to hide all the planes, and then show all the parts. And yeah, the parts are pretty much ready to export. So I'm going to select these 4 parts, right click it, and say export. And I want to, the resolution medium is good. I want to download it, and the file name doesn't really matter. And I want to export unique parts as individual files. That's really important. And then download that. And we're going to move over to Simplify 3D. Okay, over here in Simplify 3D, I am going to import, let me first open this up. I'm going to take all these parts, and actually before I do that, if you're on a Mac, you can get rid of that first part by saying rename, and then replacing that text with nothing, and then we'll just get rid of that. Sort of nice. And now let's arrange these parts. So for these parts, I like to lay it like that, and then for this, I lay it on that face. Those two are kind of obvious. And then for this one over here, I like to lay it on that face. And then for the corner, I just sort of leave it like this. And what that does is it makes it so this part here, which is the most important part, this part here, the interior part stays nice, and you'll have a little bit of a rough edge here where the support material meets up with a corner, but it works better than if you print it with this pointing up, with it like this. Anyhow, I'm gonna go through and generate support for each of these. Oh, come on, support, and let's see here, I want to look underneath it, and I want to generate some normal support, and then I'm going to remove all the stuff on the inside around here because that's not that important. So let me sort of move over here, and I'm just removing the stuff over here because you don't really need it. That part isn't important, and it just sort of, it's kind of hard to take out, and it makes it harder for the cap to go in. So that's good for that part, and I think automatic supports will work for the rest of the pieces. So I'm going to click prepare to print, and there's our G-code. So let's watch that. One thing I'm noticing is there's not a lot of contact area for the center here, and that's a problem which I've had before. And you could change that by changing the distance here and making it a little bit wider for the cap, but I'm just going to leave that as is because I don't think I'm actually going to print this. I may, but I don't think so. There you go. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to exit preview mode, and I'm going to duplicate these. And the way that I like to do it, Command D, is I like to make half the parts that I need. So it says number of copies, so there's 1 already, and there's 8 total, so I'm going to make 3 copies. And then this one, there's 12 edges, so I'm going to make 5 copies because there's 1 already, and that'll make 6. And then there's 6 centers, so 2 copies of that. I want to copy the support material, and where's the last piece? I want to make 2 copies of that one as well. And then we rearrange it, and let's prepare to print. And there you go. We can watch that. Looks pretty good. The only thing I'm worried about right now is these pieces here. And yeah, another reason why I do the corners like this is because when you do it the other way around, I'll show you with one of them. When you do it like this, it generates this really tall column of support material over here, and I've had problems with that breaking a lot in my previous prints. So I'd have to reprint the corners over and over again, or use glue stick or stuff to try to get that to stick. So I like to do it the other way around. But yeah, that's how you can prepare the parts. That's the first way I like to prepare the parts. Now let's go back to Onshape and I'll show you some other tricks that I like to use. So if you don't want to print this with support material, other than the center caps, I don't print that without support material. I always print that with support material. I guess you might be able to like split it along this axis here or along this axis here to sort of reduce the support material, but I don't think there's a way to do it without support material. But for the edges and for the corners, you can definitely do that. And so what you do is you grab a plane. I guess I'll do the edge first. I hope you guys can't hear my dog barking in the background. It's kind of annoying. So I'm going to use a regular split. I'm going to split this edge with this plane here. And I'm just going to delete this bottom half because they're exactly the same anyways. Then what you're going to want to do is make a sketch on here, and the way that I like to join the parts together is with filament. So I'll make a reference line down the middle, so from the middle of that line to the middle of that line, and I press Q to make that construction line, and then I'm going to press L again to get rid of the line tool, and then I'm going to make a line here. You could do this many different ways, but I just like to do it this way, and I'm going to mirror, well, we don't have to do that yet. We don't really need this line here, but it's just sort of nice. So I'm going to make a hole here. I'm going to make it 2 millimeters, and that's for 1.75 millimeter filament. What I find is because the first layer is a little bit squashed, that has just enough to sort of hold the piece together with a little bit of a brim that's there, and it's still not too hard to put the filament into the piece. Now I'm going to use the mirror tool just to mirror, oh whoops, wrong line. I want to mirror over this middle line, and I want to mirror these two parts. And if you want, you can add a third circle. Oh, whoops, let's go back into that sketch. You can add a third circle here, and then just click this circle and this circle and press E to make them the same size. And you can move these around however you want. But yeah, that looks good. I might want to move this one. Let me put it down here. I don't want to make this too weak, but I also want to be able to extrude it pretty high. I guess I can just put it here. So now I'm going to do an extrude and click remove, and we can sort of drag this plane here until all the holes are inside of the piece. You can click this, make it normal to it. Oh, whoops. Yeah, that didn't work, but that's okay. That looks pretty good. And now we have our edge. And if you want, you can add a chamfer here. I'm going to make that 0.5 millimeters. And what that'll do is it'll just add a little bit of a, it'll make it so you don't have that brim there and the pieces just fit in a little bit easier. So now that the edge is done, we can go ahead and hide it. Hide edge. And let's go to the corner. So let me hide the other parts. Hide other parts. And I'm going to select 3 points on this to split it in half. It doesn't matter which points you use as long as all of them are sort of on this plane here. You can use midpoints or whatever type of vertices you want. And I'm going to click plane after I have those 3 points selected. Click check mark. And then I'm going to split this piece with this plane. That looks good. And now I'm going to hit plane P twice to get rid of the plane. And I'm going to hide one of these. I'm not going to delete it because these pieces are actually unique. Okay, let's do the corner. So I'm going to click on here, Shift S, and to be normal to it, and we can just draw 3 circles. Let's make that one too, then we'll make all the other ones the same. And how about another one here, just for good measure. And then I'm going to click all 3 of them, press E to be equal, and that looks good. And now let's click extrude, and we want to remove, but let's make it symmetric, and then for the merge scope we will unhide this and make it both of them. And now we can sort of look normal to here. Notice these holes here because I think that's the shortest depth that it can be. So I'm just going to keep dragging this down until those holes disappear. And of course you could do different extrudes if you wanted to make this one less deep and then these ones deeper. But I think that's pretty good. 8 millimeters. Click the check mark. And now I'm going to hide this part. And I'm actually going to go back and grab that chamfer, put it down here. Oh, come on. All the way down. And then I'm going to edit it and use the same chamfer to select all these holes. Hope that wasn't too much to process, but I grabbed the chamfer, which was back here, and I dragged it down here until after all the holes had been made, and so I can use it for the holes in the corner too. So I'm going to add a little chamfer to all these pieces. That looks good. And then now let's export all these parts again. So I'm going to select all of the parts and I'm going to say export. Make sure that it's do the parts as a unique file thing. And I'm just going to drag that onto my desktop. Okay, now that we're back in Simplified 3D, I'm going to delete all the corners and edges. And I'm just going to rename them again. Rename 5 items just to remove that part, just for consistency's sake. And then we just need these 3 parts. I guess I didn't need to export these 2 because we already had them. And I'm going to press W to move them around. And let's lay these flat. And this one, and that's good. Now I'm going to click on the top view just so I can sort of see where they are, and I'm going to, what do we need? R. We need R. I'm going to use that to rotate them just so I can sort of make them parallel with this line here, because that way they stack better with the other parts. This one's already good. So let's press Command R to rearrange, and I'm going to go in here and generate support. So come on. And I don't want the supports in here. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to clear all supports, and I'm going to add another process without supports. And oops, let's hide all the extra stuff. Hide advanced. There you go. And I'm going to select models, and I want not the cap in the center. Okay, and then I'm going to add process 1, select models, and I want not the corner or the edge. And now I'm going to duplicate these parts. So you need 2 halves for this. So, not Control D, Command D. Since I have both of them selected, I'm just going to type in the same number as I had before. So we need 3 duplications to make 4, which is half of 8. And then for the edge, I need, there's 12 total, and I'm doing a half of it. So I need 11 of them. And that's a pretty full build plate. And now if we click prepare to print, we want to select all the processes, and I'm going to do continuous printing just to make it a little bit simpler. And it's loading. There you go. And if you look at it here, these don't use any support material anymore, it's just on the centers. If any of you guys have a way of printing the centers without support material, feel free to tell me about it. There you go. So when you're done with that, you just click Save Toolpath and then save it on your desktop or wherever you want, and you'd be ready to print it off. Now, if you guys want to learn more about designing twisty puzzles, I would advise, if you haven't already, to look at the videos which I have in the original series about like Matt Bonner's tutorials and people like that, and Gregoire Finnick's tutorial. He has a great tutorial series, which is, or not, it's not a tutorial series, he just basically goes through the design of one of his puzzles, and it's a couple hours long, but he has time codes in the description, so you can just click along there to find the different parts that you want. And also, I recently found a channel which I really like, and they have, I think, 2 or 3 full tutorial series of how to use Onshape to design different types of twisty puzzles. So let me just pull that up. The guy's name is the Atlanta Puzzler, and right now he has 3 subscribers, which I am one of them, and I have the notification bell on because I like this guy's videos. And he has an entire series on how to design a 3x3, and he also has a tutorial on how to design a Megaminx. And he comes out with videos like pretty consistently. He's been doing it for the past few weeks. And he also has a tutorial on how to use Onshape's feature script capabilities to make your own features, which is, if you remember, the tools which I use, Dario's, or not Dario, Dio Sousa's tools, which I use for doing the multiple split and for generating the cube at the beginning. He shows you how to program your own one of those. So if you're interested in programming or anything like that, definitely go check this guy out. Tell him that I sent you, and yeah, he's another great resource for learning how to make puzzles. Anyhow, guys, if you guys have anything that you want me to do in this sort of aspect of tutorials and twisty puzzle design, feel free to ask me in the comments below. And if you have any suggestions for tutorials that you think I should make or anything like that, just tell me, and I'll read all your comments. I always do. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this little series that I had. I hope you found it educational, and I hope now that you've finished it, you can sort of dive into the fun world of designing your own twisty puzzles and printing them off. I'll see you guys in the next video.